It's like, show yourself. We already know. She's like just recovering on the sidewalk. After nearly shouting themselves hoarse, the two girls finally found the individual they were looking for. In a truly, pitiful state, really. Jesus Christ, she's still going. And she has to be the next... Whatever, it's fine. The night before, Michiru had gluttonously gobbled down great quantities of fried fish, and after a hearty breakfast, she'd set off running. It was hardly surprising that she was now, in fact, lying on her side by the road, vomiting loudly. Her eyes were glazed and unfocused. Her body was totally immobile. She resembled nothing so much as a beached sea mammal. Hamne was standing a few feet away, gingerly poking at her with a stick. As you would. That's really what any of us would be doing. Just, you doing all right there? I just like to think that entire time that we were having such a stressful situation, Michiru was literally just throwing up the entire time. Forget her. I feel like every test thingy is just gonna start with Michiru. I don't know why. Yeah, that a girl, slap her. Get her up. I don't think it did anything. With all the tenderness of an interrogator slapping their prisoner awake in the middle of their torture session, Makina pulled Michiru up off the ground and shoved the letter in her face. I don't even think she could read at this point. They'd now received their third mission of the day. Its nature was quite simple. The envelope contained a single map that seemed to have been printed on a photocopier. Someone had circled part of it in red pen and then jotted a note in the margins of the page. Proceed to the designated location within the time you've been allotted. Where am I? Where am I going? Fucking Sachi. Fucking smartass. She's been throwing up for what? 15 minutes straight? Her intestines are so in the puke pile. That would be the acid that you were throwing up. See, Makina, still my partner in crime. She knew what I was talking about, because I know about the heartburn life. Oh, the acid reflux. It ain't fun, man. You underestimate Michiru's power. So it's in the mountains, and we need to get there super quickly. We're gonna see retrieving a curvometer from the pocket of her skirt for some reason. Sachi began to remove it along the winding road on their map. Oh, we're definitely gonna need some sort of fucking vehicle or something. Their new destination was now over in the next prefecture, separated by a mountain from their current location. It wasn't far from the farm that supplied eggs and chicken to the restaurant Amine's parents ran. For a while, she'd driven out there every morning. At first, those trips had been on the restaurant's motorcycle. After getting her driver's license, she'd taken their mini truck instead. Day in and day out, in rain and snow, she'd sped out there and back, battling the early bird street racers who used it as their personal practice track.
まずいな。ここって電車の駅もなければ、バスも1時間に1本の山の中だよ。行くとしたら車かバイクしか。
Alright, either I get Machina to hijack a car and then have Amine drive it, or we use Amine's hotness to seduce a person and then knock them out and steal their car and Amine drives it.
タクシーなら間に合うんじゃん？
I don't know.
残り時間が50分じゃ、タクシーでも無理じゃないかな。
We'd have to wait for them to get there, and I don't think they'd listen if you told them to go faster. Given the time you'd lose to traffic signals and such, traveling 40 kilometers in the 50 minutes wasn't easy. You'd have to be averaging about 70 kilometers per hour. She could try to head home and borrow a ride from her parents, but, given their time limit, it didn't seem too realistic. Well, maybe Kazuki left some sort of vehicle just available to us, then we gotta, find it. It has to be, if she did, it has to be around here. She would not do this for no reason. Or rather, without being able to complete it. As Amine racked her brains for a better solution, a rundown store across the street happened to catch her eye. It was a used car dealership. Oh, with a small sign advertising cars for rent. Oh, you just spoke my language. Rent?
そうか。借りるって手もあるな。みんな、お金いくら持ってる？8200円ですね。
Is $82 enough to rent a car?
2800円。
Alright, $100.
私は24557円。足りるかな？マキナは？
Oh my god. Magina's just like, don't worry, guys.
ちょっと待ってね。12万6400円？あとはカードになっちゃうけど、カードは多分凍結されてるのよさ。
Okay, this has to be enough to rent a car, right?
まあ、これだけあれば十分か。
Yeah, that's way more than enough. Alright. Generally speaking, this fucking... What is this? When am I going down the country road? Also, did I say 8,200 yen and 2,800 yen added up to 100? Well, I mean, I was close. Anyway, it's a temporary means of transportation and nothing more. Most places aren't going to lend out flashy sports cars or anything, and given the cost of insuring expensive vehicles, you'll pay way more for high-performance rides. Also, when you're poking around a sleepy dealership next to the highway that's clearly run by some local landowner's second son as a tax shelter for his dad, there's really no point even hoping for something decent. It doesn't even matter. As Amine looked over the various cars lined up on the lot, it was all she could do to keep from groaning in dismay. Dude, if anyone could find a car or something that can get us there, or force it to get us there, it's Amine. Come on. Everywhere she turned, she saw ancient hatchbacks and coupes from 20 or 30 years ago. They were mostly beaters in visibly poor condition.
贅沢は言ってられないのは分かってるけどさ。
Really, you were just... You were hoping for too much. Shaking her head, she turned toward the prefab hut that served as the dealership, intending to ask if there were any cars they could drive off in immediately. The lone employee inside, however, was in the middle of a phone call. All right, we steal the car, and then these don't look so bad. You know, it's just, I mean,
はい、ちょうどお見えになられました。
oh, god damn it. What do you mean? After briefly glancing through the window at her face, the woman put down the phone and said, "You're Suo Amane, correct?"
お車の代金はすでにいただいておりますので、どれでもお好きな車をお選びください。
Thank you.
はい？え？どういうこと？
この状況でレンタカーに目をつけるのはタナトスさんに予想されてたってこと？
Thank you, Kazuki. I will remember this.
予想というか、車を借りなきゃクリアできない条件を出したのはタナトスさんなんだし、最初からそう仕組まれてるって感じでしょうか。
I mean, the car dealership's literally right here.
なるほどね。タナトスさんらしいというか、なんというか。つーかさ、好きなの選べってのはありがたいんだけど。
Come on, Amane, I know you can get the best one. These old cars look particularly appealing, to be honest. They had plenty of mini trucks, mainly Mazda motor cabs and Nizuki Garys, a number of sedans, including 4 hardtop Nissan Glodias, and a L'Oreal HT2000 SGX. and a row of hatchbacks such as Mazda Familio XGS or XGs and non-turbo Honda City models. In other words, there wasn't a single car packing the sort of power they required.
唯一スポーツカーっぽいのはパルサーのミラの X1 か。せめて GTIR だったらな。
Can we have a screaming metal death trap? You could technically call an X1 a hot patch, but this X1E variant had a non-turbo OHC 16-valve 1500cc engine, meaning it was basically a car for old ladies. And we ain't old ladies! Well, it did have 97 horsepower, although that wasn't anything special for its size. Nothing else in this junkyard really can compare. But just as she was about to select the X1, Amane sensed something out of place at her side. She just fucking senses it. The source of this feeling seemed to be a Toyota Duet sitting next to the Bulsar in the hatchback corner.
あれ？このデュエット、もしかして。
Could it be a Taihatsu Nutoria? Don't know. She hadn't noticed at first because it was painted dark green, but it looked a bit like
クロス4。
mud flaps hung loosely behind the tires. She could see a roll cage inside the passenger's compartment. The back seat had been removed entirely. Oh my god. Trying to slow her racing heart, Amane circled behind the car and on its rear end found the X4 logo. This is it. Along with the TRS sticker of the Taihatsu Racing Service. Yes! Yes! To think I'd find you in a place like this. It felt something like running into a dear old friend at a train station. Almost as if it had been waiting there for years, just for her. In fact, it may very well have. Overwhelmed by shock and joy, Amane embraced the car with tears in her eyes. How about we just... Kazuki, can we have it? Like... Irritated by the trembling of her own hands, she hurriedly filled out the rental paperwork. Dude, I was gonna say, like, the paperwork's probably the most time-consuming. By the time the woman returned her license and handed her the keys, she managed to calm down at least a little. Oh, God. The Taihatsu Notoria X4. To be certain, its endearingly round face and cheap mini-car-style interior made it the very picture of an old lady vehicle. But this unassuming appearance belied its true identity. A genuine sports car, boasting a 120 horsepower twin-turbo high-boost engine and an overall weight of only 804 kg. In accordance with the rules of rally racing, its engine's displacement came in at a rather unusual 713cc, but an obsessive focus on cutting weight, even the AC and audio systems were optional, oh my god, meant it had more than enough power. It was, in short, a micro monster, ideally suited to zipping along mountain roads with lots of tight corners. Perfect. And its old granny mobile exterior appealed to its fans, who often covered the seats in white lace to play up the wolf in sheep's clothing
エン
angle.
ジンルームの排熱が悪いのかな。水温の上がりが早い。
When she pressed down on the accelerator to see what would happen, the RPM rose only sluggishly, suggesting the engine's turbines were ridiculously large. The numbers kept ticking up slowly, almost as if the fuel mixture was overly rich. But as soon as the engine reached 5,000 RPM, the tachometer needle jumped fiercely upward, and the boost gauge shot up to 2.0 kPa.
キーだな。美味しいところは5000から8000の間かな。
You could tame her. With a car like this, you wanted to kick the clutch on even the tightest corners. But given how lightweight it was, if you happen to bump into something while turning into the curve, God only knows you'd end up careening into a ravine and having to survive for weeks only to get eaten by ghouls or something. At the same time, she'd have to make sure not to decelerate or let the RPM needle fall too much. On the uphill curves in particular, there'd be a real danger of the engine stalling if her entry was anything less than perfect.
これ結構やばい車かも。
And that only revs her gears even more.
ほらチルチル車に乗るのよ。
Pylon!
私乗らない絶対乗らない
胸の横にはもう絶対乗らないって決めたの。別に私じゃなくてもいいでしょ。マキナ、あんたが行きなさいよ。
God, that's right. She's after the incident. Those were the days. That was the fruits days. Holy shit. It's been like a million years. Also, you had to go and mature because you were the one given the letter.
そうは言ってもタナトスさんの指示は松島みちるって言ってたのよ。だからチルチルが行かなきゃダメなのよ。
You tell her, Machina. You lay down those rules.
なんで私を指定したのよ。
She seems to be doing that.
知らん。
みちる様、あまりわがままをおっしゃらないでください。後で好きなお菓子買ってあげますから。
I almost read that as I'll bury you. And goddamn, that would...
子供じゃあるまいし、そんな言葉に騙されないわよ。
We'll get you 2 candies.
いらないんですか、お菓子。
何買ってくれるのよ。
What kind of...
何でもいいですよ。一つだけなら何でも好きなの買ってあげます。
Only one, damn it. But it's anything. It's literally anything you want, Michiru. Come on!
どうでもいいけど早くしてくれる？時間ないんだけど。
わかったわよ。乗ればいいんでしょ。乗れば。
And so Michiru signed her fate away to
と
Satan.
いうわけで、みちる様の快諾が得られたところで、よろしくお願いします、あまねさん。
Oh, it's all over. Amane's flip is about... The switch is about to be flipped. With this, Sachi handed over Thanatos' phone, currently displaying an analog stopwatch. The time they had remaining was displayed in a separate counter on the bottom of the screen. Amane promptly jammed it into one of the car's cup
じゃ
holders.
あ行ってくる。ごめんね。人乗せると重くなっちゃうから。とりあえずみちるだけ連れてく。
I think Michiru might die.
気をつけるのよ。
I think it's over.
わかってる。
Nodding to Machina, Amane reached out and started the stopwatch
タイマ
timer.
ーがゼロになったらスタートするよ。ほら、ちゃんとベルトした？
Do we have a seat belt?
あばね。私まだお腹の具合が。
Really?
いい加減もう全部入っちゃったでしょ。時間がないのよ。 最初はゆっくり行くから我慢して。
I don't think she's gonna take it slow at first. Moving the short stroke shifter to put the car in first gear, Amne glanced behind her, then eased her car's round nose toward the main road outside the lot. Flipping on her turn signal, she hit the brakes on the slanting sidewalk ramp, and keeping the car in a sprinter-style leaning hole-shot stance, pushed the engine up towards 5,000 RPM. On the verge of reaching the power band, she paused to double-check the area around her.
後方よし、前方よし、もう一度後方よし。行くよ、みちる。え、ゆっくり行くんでしょ。ゆっくり行くって言ったよね。
Really though, what's slow to Amane?
私とみちるでゆっくりの解釈が少し違うかもしれないね。5、4、3、2。
Too late!
もう遅いっての。ゼロ。
Cheers already done. Oh, god damn it. The very instant her stopwatch finished counting down, Amane roughly engaged the clutch. The compact cross transmission let out a distinctive high-pitched whine. In less than 3 seconds, she'd burned right through first gear. When she released the accelerator pedal and stepped on the clutch, exhaust from the turbines escaped audibly through the wastegate. Quickly moving the shift knob, she stepped down on the accelerator once again. And in no time at all, she'd blown through second gear as well. With a racing cross transmission like this one, the gap to third gear was wide, but fourth and fifth would come easily afterward. And even when changing gears, the engine kept moving at 7,500 RPM, allowing for steady acceleration.
軽いせいかな。なんかポコポコ跳ねちゃうけど、いいぞ、いける。
That's not helping Michiru any. Oh my god. Michiru screamed, the engine howled, and the car rushed down the road carrying two foolish young women in very different states of mind. Thanatos had instructed them to bring Matsushima Michiru to the designated point within the allotted time. Letting her out clearly wasn't an option. As the city streets flew past, all Michiru could do was wail in distress. Amne steered them through a series of back roads to the foot of the mountain they needed to cross. There, she stopped the car and got out to examine it. Oh, just a little stop. Just a little stop. As soon as the vehicle came to a halt, Michiru tumbled out of it, grabbed her mouth, and began to retch once more. But now she'd fully expelled the contents of her stomach, so only acid really came up out of her throat. Watching her unfortunate friend out of the corner of her eye, Amane squatted down next to their car and checked the condition of the tires. S tires like these were designed for racing, but they had a nasty tendency to lose their grip entirely when they got worn out. Oh god, no.
大丈夫。タイヤはまだ生きてる。いい感じに熱が入ってドロドロだよ。
They're nice and gooey. We're gonna die.
そうかい。そいつはよかったわね。私の胃もドロドロだわよ。もう着いたの。
Death claims us all in the end, Michiru.
何言ってんの？ここからが本番じゃない。
嘘でしょ。もう無理。吐いても何も出ないわよ。
Then stop trying.
大丈夫。吐くだけ吐いて、辛いのを通り越したら、今度はだんだん気持ちよくなってくるから。
What if she gets like acid in the car? Then like we have to turn it in with acid.
それってさ、脳がこれ以上はやばいって判断してんじゃないの？
ここからなら、あと30分もかからないから、すぐに終わるって。ほら乗って、すぐに出るよ。
It'll be all over soon.
汁が？
車が。
Had this girl puked out her own brain fluid somehow? Well, it's Michiru. For Michiru's sake, she clearly needed to finish this as quickly as possible. Before moving into serious mode, Amane flipped the intercooler sprayer switch, hoping to lower its temperature somewhat. Generally speaking, you always wanted to keep your battery warm and your motor as cool as possible. Kind of like a computer. You know, some parts you want actually hot, some parts you want cool. Actually, no, you want all parts cool. Bursts of cooling help keep the air flowing into your engine stay dense, allowing for the greater concentration of oxygen in the air-fuel mixture, regaining you some of the power you lost due to heat. That said, engines tended to return to their normal temperature within a few minutes of being cooled, so this sort of procedure was only marginally useful. But Amine always thought the acceleration felt a bit more responsive for a while afterward, so it wasn't something she could totally dismiss. After one quick final check of the car's condition, she glanced at her watch. 23 minutes were left. We still got time. Even for Amine, getting past this mountain in that amount of time wasn't going to be easy. I'm scared.
というわけで、ここからは本気で行くよ。
I'm scared. I don't want it.
本気って今までのは何だったの？
I don't want it.
今までっていうか、私隣に人を乗せて本気で走るのはこれが初めてだよ。
Machiru's the first.
大丈夫なの？
Maybe.
信じてもらうしかないかな。まあホームコースだし大丈夫でしょ。
Before Amine came to Mahama, when she was helping out her family with their business, she'd always taken this exact road over the mountain to pick up eggs from a poultry farm on the other side. Back then, her best time with the restaurant's mini truck was 27 minutes and 32.07 seconds. Based on that, they just weren't going to make it. But even so, behind the wheel of this car, she was definitely going to manage somehow. With our gooey, sticky tires. The X4 had been designed from the ground up to compete in rally races on public roads, and for some time after its debut, nothing can compare to its power. Amine had the greatest possible confidence in it. Though it didn't weigh any more than an average mini truck, its engine had real horsepower, and rather than 8-ply tires you'd find on an average mini, it had road-legal S tires, ideal for high-speed maneuvers. Firmly fastening her 4-point harness and pressing her hips against the back of her seat, Amine switched herself into time attack mode. Alright, here's what you Machiru, just fucking go limp. Just go limp. You'll be fine.
3、2、1、0、スタート。
That's how you do, just go limp! Limp! Synchronizing with the countdown of the tachometer, the phone sitting on her dashboard, she waited for the second hand to hit 0, then began the race. A sudden burst of power sent them shooting forward. Some of it escaped to the other side, making the X4's frame tremble and groan. As the car accelerated explosively, its 4 shallow tread high-performance tires tore at the road surface. When she turned the steering wheel, Amine sensed through her seat that its weight had shifted onto the outer rear tire. Just from the way the car moved, she could tell the exact condition of every tire.
いいぞ、加速が戻ってる。いっけ、クロスフォー。
Chira just dies right after this. It felt as if her brain was melting, but not in a bad way. For Suo Amine, acceleration was something like a narcotic. We saw this last time when this happened. As a baby, she'd sat on her father's knee and reveled in the speed of his car. A part of her associated the sound of an engine with the comfort of the womb. The faster she went, the closer she felt to heaven. Amine had spent a lot of time behind the wheel of a front-heavy truck with a short wheelbase and little power. Its floppy chassis and unforgiving handling had taught her how to control the distribution of weight across her tires. And of course, she'd driven this road countless times, under all possible conditions. When you threw in a genuinely powerful, maneuverable car like this one, it was almost unfair to everybody else, honestly.
いいぞ、ぐいぐい登る。やっぱターボってすごいな。足もしっとりしててよく動く。無駄に硬いだけの足より姿勢が作りやすい。
That moment you're driving up a mountain and you look to the side and you just see a fucking drop with no railing. And you're like, well. The key to success lay in this early uphill section, where her technical skills could gain her a few precious seconds here and there, and it would essentially decide her total time. The second half was downhill with a lot of straightaways, so the power of her car would be the only relevant factor. She had to gain as much time as she possibly could before then. Jesus Christ, this is so technical. After barreling through a sharp right turn at the top of third gear, she threw the car into fourth while approaching the first checkpoint, a small store that sold general goods to campers. She'd gotten through the first section more than 4 seconds ahead of her best mini truck time. The next problem was a small jumping spot. What do you mean? Just past the bridge over the Ryogyu River. Michiru's been quiet for a while. I think she actually passed out. If you were going too fast when you hit that point, all 4 of your wheels would leave the road, and you'd end up losing speed. Better to ease up on the throttle instead. Apart from the hairpin turns, she didn't allow her tires to slide around. No reason to let any power escape to the side when it could be pushing you forward instead. By the next checkpoint, a vending machine by the local liquor store, she'd gained another 2.5 seconds. A very nice pace. But just as Amine was thrilling in the prospect of victory, the tail of another car appeared in front of her. Uh-oh. Oh, no. Oh. The vehicle in question was a Bugatti Veyron. By all accounts, the single most powerful super sports car in the world. As for the man driving this internationally famous machine, well, for the purposes of this episode, let's give him the name Beaknose. Yeah, sure. God only knows what exactly this individual did for a living, but he routinely purchased the most powerful cars he could possibly could out of a rather inane desire to arrive at his friends' parties as quickly as humanly possible. And we've met one person who does this. In fact, we'd encountered him like 2 times. He'd only recently gotten his hands on the godlike, incredibly expensive monster he was currently driving. Naturally enough, he'd been on Cloud 9 for weeks. They just had to bring... Oh, my God. And they had to bring him when we're trying to race with... In short, having obtained this divine gift, the beak-nosed man was totally drunk on its power. But just a moment ago, he'd noticed a small family car on the road behind him. He was trying not to burn too much gas or wear out his tires, but the man was still moving at a very decent clip. So when he glanced in the rearview mirror and saw that unassuming little vehicle approaching, he was dumbfounded. It matters who's behind the wheel. Yep, here we fucking go. On even the briefest of straightaways, all you had to do was press down on the accelerator and the Veyron would accelerate as much as you wanted. On Japan's narrow highways, however, you couldn't keep the accelerator all the way down for a single second. So the next corner would be right in front of you in the blink of an eye. Oh my... That's just gonna antagonize her. This was an ungodly expensive car, and it had power in proportion to its cost. Beaknose's confidence was absolute. Beaknose. Certain that he left the small interloper far behind, he glanced into his mirror, only to find that the distance between them had actually shrunk. He could feel the hairs on the back of his neck standing up. We'll show you. And then we'll take your car. Like usual. But for some reason, every time we went around a corner, it was getting closer and closer. How could a granny mobile like that be chasing down a Veyron? It didn't make any of the slightest bit damn sense.
いえばバイロンやぞ。なんでやねんな。
Reality was bearing steadily down on him, but it was difficult for Beaknose to accept. Oh my Jesus. Whenever he touched the brake pedal to approach a corner, the endearing grilled face of the X4 grew larger and larger in his rear view mirror. Its driver was taking advantage of the car's low weight to hit the brakes much later than him, more than compensating for their difference in horsepower. Beaknose had forgotten one crucial advantage that any motor vehicle could possess: the nimbleness of a featherweight.
そやバイロンやねんぞ。
By smugly assuming that expensive technology could render him invincible, the man had invited his own doom. To Beaknose, the dark green vehicle in his rearview mirror was no longer just a car. It was a Mitsubishi A6M fighter plane on the tail of an F4U Corsair, an enemy he couldn't shake off no matter how he squirmed.
ゼロや。ゼロはまだ生きとったんや。
A Zero was riding his ass. For Beaknose, who'd grown up hearing his American grandfather's stories about his days as a fighter pilot, the thought was enough to fill him with absolute terror. The trickle of cold sweat ran down his spine. In combination with the psychological pressure bearing down on him, it slowed his reaction time slightly. Oh, can't afford that. With the next corner approaching far too quickly, Beaknose hurriedly slammed on the brakes. The pedal vibrated beneath his feet as the electronic ABS activated. When he finally moved his steering wheel, the Biren obediently turned its nose inward. But it was already too late. Oh, in the very next instant, the dark green Zero had pushed its goofy little snout into the slight gap he'd left on the inside of the curve to get wrecked.
マジか。危ないやんけ。
Uh-huh. Just as those words left Beaknose's mouth, he heard a rush of exhaust from the X4's wastegate as the driver changed gears. The sound was very, very close. Oh no, they're right next to me. We're gonna collide! The Biren had only just changed its bearing, and given its usual body, Beaknose didn't have a precise sense of how much space there was between the two vehicles. The fear of a high-speed collision left his hands frozen on the wheel.
かん。曲がりきれん。
Once again, he was forced to slam down on the brakes, this time even a little harder than before. The Biren's speedometer needle dropped rapidly. Oh my god. And in the flash of an eye, the dark green devil slipped ruthlessly past him. It felt as if a murderous creature had lunged by with an awful smirk on its face after swinging a bloody knife at his throat. His will to fight utterly broken, Beaknose sat like a statue in his luxurious seat. After a moment, he managed to swallow. The adrenaline had drained from his body, and shivers were running down his spine. His foot eased off the accelerator. Slowly and quietly, he pulled over into the shoulder. As his hands left the steering wheel, he realized they were trembling. It felt as if he'd just awoken from a terrible nightmare. But he knew the truth. That devilish thing, the dark green Zero, was all too real. He'd met a monster and survived. His mind was full of both relief and terror. Wrapping his arms tightly around his leather steering wheel, Beaknose leaned forward and quietly wept. God damn it. Matsushima Michiru, still fastened into the Zero's passenger seat, had spent the ride staring into space with the expression of someone trying to force a sneeze. When she regained consciousness, the car had come to a stop. I figured she was basically just dead.
着いたの。地図で指示された場所ってだいたいこの辺だと思うんだけど。
This fucking tune, man. Looking at her watch, Amine found that they made it with 15 seconds to spare. Fucking sweet! That said, they were currently sitting in the middle of a farm road surrounded by fields. The only other human being in sight was a farmer who seemed to be taking a stroll with her cow.
あの牛連れたおばちゃんが次のヒントくれるのよ。
そんなまさか。
Give us the hint, old lady.
ちょっと聞いてくる。
Michiru, why?
ちょっとみち
Michiru, stop. Ignoring Amane's attempts to stop her, Michiru leapt out of the car and ran over to the old woman.
つか、なんて声かける気よ。
Let's find out.
松島みちるです。ヒントをください。松島みちるです。
And of course, she doesn't like a crazy person.
そのままかーい。
Smacking the steering wheel with the back of her hand, Amane reflexively provided the obvious retort. Naturally enough, the old lady with the cow was rather taken aback as well. Dude.
案外よ、わかんねえんだけっちょもよ。誰がどう間違ってんでねえのげ。
I am Matsushima Michiru, and you will tell me!
あれ違う。どういうこと？
Michiru, why are you dumb?
おめあれが頭の病気が。あいや、シャエバ山の向こうにサナトリウムちゅうのがあんで、そこ行って相談し
Well, we might need to go there after all this is said and
れ。
done.
まあ、キャミの毛こんな色さなるまでバカになってしもってお気の毒なこと。
Oh, don't knock her hair.
違います。松島バカじゃありません。松島は
I like how there's times where she'll say she's stupid, and then other times she just denies it. Did she really look that dumb at a glance? Was it her hair? As Michiru earnestly pondered whether to abandon the bottle blonde way of life, something in the old woman's clothing began to emit an electronic jingle. Oh my god.
電話だな。ちょっくらごめんなんしょ。
Can you pass the phone? Reaching into her breast pocket, the cow lady took out a smartphone with a stylized apple on the back. Apple products?
いや、なじゃした？
What's the matter? Flicking at the screen forcefully, she pressed the phone to her ear. After a brief conversation, to which the old lady contributed only a few grunts, she turned back to stare at Michiru with a slightly dubious look in her eyes.
おう、確かに小汚い黄色いのおっけど。はあ、こいつのことかの。うん、お嬢ちゃん、名前なんて言うたかの。
She was only shouting it a million times.
松島です。松島みちるです。
See?
ほんじゃったらおめえに電話だ。
God damn it. Michiru eagerly brought the old lady's phone to her ear. As expected, the voice on the other end of the line belonged to Thanatos.
おいっす。タナトスジャケットもよ。
I love Kazuki.
ちょっと、こんなとこに呼び出してどういうことよ。何もないじゃない。
Oh, don't be so sure about that.
まあ、あなたたちの機動力をテストしただけだから、目的地なんてどこでもよかったのよ。
Well, never mind.
次で最後だから頑張りなさいな。いい？今から言うことを暗記して。
The final test.
うん。
I'm ready. Let your mouth words flow into my ear hole.
次の指令は、現在位置から東へ30キロの方向に東海線の東松浜駅があるから、そこに向かいなさい。
そんなことを言うだけのためにこんなところに呼び出したの。そんなの電話かければすぐに済む用事じゃない。
She literally said she was testing your mobility.
なんでわざわざこんな場所に呼び出して牛のおばちゃんの電話を使うの。おかげでちょっと恥かいたじゃないのよ。恥かいた。
Just a little.
だって電話だけ指定場所に送るという方法を取られたらテストの意味がないでしょ。だから現地の回線であなたの存在を確認するためにこうしたのよ。まあ電話だけを40キロ離れた場所に送ったとしても、それはそれで評価すべき手腕だとは思うけれど、今回はダメ。わかる？
Wouldn't that have proved something entirely different? I feel like that's a different skill.
わかんにゃい。
よし、それでいい。わからないときは私の言葉だけを信じなさい。いいわね、松島みちる。
あ
Just do as she says.
あうじゃないわよ。はいかいいえかはっきりしないのがあなたの悪い癖よ。
はいはいはいはい、わかったわよ。
ちゃんと言う通りにすればいいんでしょ。
Yes, that is.
はい、いい子ね。じゃあ牛のおばさまにお礼を言って次の行動に移りなさい。この豚。
Pig.
今豚って言った？
言ってないわよ。
あ、そう。空耳ならいいんだけど。
急ぎなさい、豚。
あれ、やっぱ豚って言ってるよね。
I don't know what you're talking about.
小汚い黄色い豚。
Piss-colored pig.
おやおや、はっきりと言っちゃってるよね。
Of course not. She hangs up. In the very next instant, the phone call abruptly came to an end. Shakes fist at sky, and Michiru's howl of rage vanished unheard into the peaceful fields and the clear blue sky above them. Okay, they made it. At least. Thanatos! Piss-colored pig! Dude, that was intense. The driving parts are always intense for no reason. I mean, there is reasons, and that fucking guy as well. And then, god damn it. That's where Amine likes to be. Behind the wheel of a vehicle and go really, really, really fast. Dangerously fast, in fact.